What kind of person smashes a streetlight in the middle of a quiet neighborhood, leaving families to stumble in the dark, and thinks they can walk away unscathed? Karen Miller did. On a humid August evening in Austin, Texas, the kind of night where the air clings to your skin and crickets hum like a warning, she stood at the corner of Willow Street, her silhouette sharp against the fading sunset. A baseball bat hung loosely in her grip, its weight pulling her shoulders forward as if it knew what was coming. Her eyes, narrowed and wild, locked onto the streetlight that had stood there for decades, its soft glow a quiet guardian over the block. Without a word, she swung. The crack of metal against glass echoed like a gunshot, and shards rained down, glinting in the dying light. A child's scream pierced the air from a nearby porch. Karen didn't flinch. She dropped the bat, dusted her hands, and walked back to her sleek SUV as if she'd just swatted a fly. Willow Street wasn't just any street. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes until the stars came out, where neighbors waved from porches, and where the streetlights, old but reliable, kept everyone safe. Karen, though, had been at war with that light for weeks. She'd moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago, a newcomer with a pristine lawn and a habit of glaring at anyone who parked too close to her driveway. The streetlight, she claimed, shone too brightly into her bedroom window, ruining her sleep. She'd called the city, filed complaints, even screamed at a utility worker who'd come to check it. "It's like living next to a stadium," she'd snapped, though the light was no brighter than any other on the block. The city offered to install a shade. Karen refused. She wanted it gone. That night, as the glass crunched under her boots, Karen didn't know she'd been seen. Across the street, Mia Alvarez, a single mom who worked nights at a diner, watched from her window. Her 6-year-old daughter, Lila, clung to her leg, whispering, "Why is she so mad, Mommy?" Mia didn't answer. She was already dialing 911, her hands shaking. The streetlight wasn't just a light. It was the only thing keeping the path to the bus stop safe for her and dozens of others. Without it, the street sank into a dangerous void, shadows swallowing the sidewalk where kids walked to school and joggers ran at dawn. Mia's heart pounded as she spoke to the dispatcher, her voice low but firm. She broke it. On purpose. I saw her. By the time Karen slid into her SUV, the distant wail of sirens was already closing in. She didn't speed off. She didn't hide. She sat there, scrolling through her phone, as if the world would bend to her like it always had. Karen was 42, a real estate agent with a knack for closing deals and a reputation for getting what she wanted. She'd grown up in a small town where her charm and sharp tongue opened every door, and Austin, with its laid-back vibe, felt like a place she could mold to her liking. But Willow Street wasn't her playground. The neighbors, tight-knit and protective, had already grown weary of her complaints about kids' laughter, about dogs barking, about anything that didn't fit her vision of perfection. The police cruiser pulled up minutes later, its lights painting the street red and blue. Officer Daniel Ruiz, a 10-year veteran with a calm demeanor, stepped out. He saw the bat lying in the grass, the shattered light, and Karen, leaning against her car, arms crossed. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but edged with authority. "Care to explain this?" Karen didn't hesitate. "That light was a nuisance," she said, her tone clipped, like she was scolding a waiter for a cold meal. "I've been asking the city to fix it for weeks. They didn't listen, so I handled it." Ruiz raised an eyebrow, jotting notes. "Handled it," he repeated. "You know this is city property, right? And that you just endangered everyone on this street." Karen scoffed, tossing her hair. "Endangered? Please. It's just a light. I'm the one who's been suffering." Her words hung in the air, cold and unyielding, as a small crowd gathered, neighbors stepping out, their faces a mix of shock and anger. Mia stood at the edge, Lila peeking from behind her. Karen's eyes flicked toward them, and for a moment, something like unease crossed her face. But it vanished as quickly as it came. Ruiz asked her to stay put while he surveyed the damage. The streetlight's pole was dented, its bulb obliterated, wires sparking faintly. A jogger, passing by, nearly tripped over a shard of glass. "This is bad," Ruiz muttered to his partner, who'd just arrived. Kids walk here. People cross at night. Someone's going to get hurt. They turned back to Karen, who was now tapping her foot, impatient. Am I free to go? She asked, as if this were a minor inconvenience. Ruiz shook his head. Not quite. You're looking at vandalism, maybe reckless endangerment. You'll need to come with us. Karen's face hardened. You're kidding me, she said, her voice rising. For Streetlight? Do you know who I am? Ruiz didn't flinch. He'd heard that line before. As he read her rights, the neighbors watched, their whispers growing louder. Mia clutched Lila's hand, her anger mixed with relief. Karen had crossed the line, and now she'd face the consequences. Or so they thought. As the cruiser drove off with Karen in the back, the street fell quiet again, but the tension lingered. The broken light cast long shadows, a reminder of what had been lost. Mia knelt beside Lila, brushing a tear from her cheek. It's okay, baby, she said. She can't hurt us. But deep down, Mia wasn't so sure. Karen's defiance, her utter lack of remorse, felt like a storm cloud waiting to burst. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Willow Street buzzed with gossip. Neighbors clustered on porches, sipping coffee and recounting the previous night's chaos. The shattered streetlight stood like a wounded sentinel, its jagged edges catching the sunlight. Mia, bleary-eyed from a sleepless night, walked Lila to the bus stop, her eyes scanning the dark stretch where the light used to be. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the shadows themselves were watching. The other parents at the stop whispered about Karen, their voices a mix of disbelief and outrage. Who does that? One said. She could have hurt someone. Mia stayed quiet, her mind replaying Karen's cold stare. At the police station, Karen sat in a small holding room, her manicured nails drumming on the table. She wasn't scared, she was annoyed. To her, this was a misunderstanding, a bureaucratic overreach. She'd already called her lawyer, a sharp-witted man named Greg who'd gotten her out of smaller scrapes before. This is ridiculous, she told him over the phone, her voice low but venomous. They're acting like I burned the whole street down. It's one light. Greg, calm and calculated, advised her to stay quiet. Karen, this isn't just vandalism, he said. You endangered people. The city's taking this seriously. She rolled her eyes. They'll drop it. They always do. But the city wasn't dropping it. Officer Ruiz had filed a detailed report, noting the streetlight's role in public safety and the eyewitness account from Mia. The charges were stacking up. Vandalism, reckless endangerment, and potentially more if the city pushed for it. Karen's act wasn't just a tantrum. It had left a busy pedestrian path unlit, a hazard for anyone walking at night. Ruiz had seen cases like this before, where entitlement clashed with reality. But Karen's brazen attitude stood out. She didn't just break the light. She seemed proud of it. By noon, the story had spread beyond Willow Street. A local news van parked near the broken light. A reporter interviewing neighbors while a cameraman filmed the wreckage. Mia, caught off guard on her way home, declined to speak, but others didn't hold back. She's been a problem since she moved in, said Tom, an older man who lived next door to Karen. Always complaining, always demanding. This is just her. The news segment aired that evening with the headline, Austin woman smashes streetlight, sparks outrage. Karen's face, pulled from her real estate website, flashed across screens citywide. Karen, released on bail, saw the broadcast from her living room. Her jaw tightened as the reporter described her as a disruptive force in a peaceful community. She tossed the remote onto the couch, muttering, "They don't know me." But deep down, the attention stung. She wasn't used to being the villain. Her phone buzzed with texts from clients, some canceling appointments, others asking if the story was true. She ignored them, focusing instead on her next move. She wasn't going to apologize. She'd fight this, prove she was in the right. The light was a nuisance, and she'd done what anyone would do, or so she told herself. Meanwhile, Mia was grappling with her own fears. The news had mentioned her as the eyewitness, though not by name, and she worried Karen would find out. She'd seen the way Karen looked at her last night, like she was memorizing her face. Mia had grown up in Austin, raised by parents who taught her to stand up for what was right, but this felt different. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was unpredictable. Mia's boss at the diner, noticing her distraction, pulled her aside. "You okay, hon?" she asked. Mia hesitated, then nodded. "Just worried about my kid." She didn't mention Karen, but the weight of the night before hung heavy. That afternoon, a twist emerged that no one saw coming. A teenage boy, Ethan, who lived 3 houses down, came forward with a video. He'd been filming skate tricks on his phone when Karen smashed the light, and his camera had caught the whole thing: her swing, the glass shattering, her casual walk back to her car. He showed it to his dad, who passed it to Ruiz. The footage was crystal clear, undeniable. "This changes everything," Ruiz said, watching the clip. It wasn't just Mia's word now. Karen's act was on tape, a digital noose tightening around her defense. Ethan's video spread like wildfire. By evening, it was on social media, racking up thousands of views. The comments were brutal. "Who raised her? Jail time for this Karen." Mia saw the video while scrolling on her break, her heart racing. It was proof, yes, but it also made things real in a way she hadn't expected. Karen wasn't just a neighbor anymore. She was a public spectacle. Mia felt a pang of pity, but it faded fast. Karen had chosen this. She'd swung the bat. Back at her house, Karen watched the video too, her face pale. Greg called, his voice grim. "This isn't good, Karen. That footage, it's damning. We need to talk strategy." But Karen wasn't listening. She was already planning her counterattack. She'd go to the neighborhood meeting tomorrow, face the crowd, and spin the story her way. She wasn't the villain here. She was the victim of a faulty system, of nosy neighbors, of a world that didn't understand her. As she stared at the broken streetlight through her window, now cordoned off with caution tape, she felt a flicker of doubt. But she pushed it down. She'd win this. She always did. The neighborhood meeting was held in the community center, a modest brick building with flickering fluorescent lights and folding chairs arranged in a semicircle. The room was packed, the air thick with tension. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years sat shoulder to shoulder, united by their anger. Mia stood near the back, her arms crossed, Lila at home with a babysitter. She didn't want to be here, but she felt she had to. The broken streetlight wasn't just a symbol now. It was a wound, and the community wanted answers. Karen walked in 10 minutes late, her heels clicking on the linoleum. She wore a tailored blazer and a practiced smile, as if she were closing a deal. The room went silent, every eye on her. She didn't flinch. She took a seat near the front, crossing her legs and nodding politely to the moderator, a retired teacher named Susan who'd organized the meeting. Susan cleared her throat, her voice steady but sharp. "We're here to discuss the incident on Willow Street," she said. "The destruction of public property, the danger it's caused, and what we do next." The discussion erupted fast. Tom, the neighbor who'd spoken to the news, stood first. "That light kept my grandkids safe when they walked home from school," he said, his voice shaking. "Now, they're scared to go out at night. Who's going to fix this?" Others chimed in, their stories piling up. A jogger who'd twisted an ankle in the dark. A nurse who nearly crashed her bike dodging glass. Mia stayed quiet, her stomach churning. She didn't want to speak, didn't want Karen's eyes on her, but the weight of the room pulled her forward. When Susan called on her, Mia's voice was soft but clear. "I saw it happen," she said. "She didn't just break the light. She did it like it was nothing, like we don't matter." The room murmured in agreement, and Karen's smile faltered. She stood, uninvited, her voice cutting through the noise. "This is being blown out of proportion," she said, her tone smooth but edged with irritation. "That light was a problem. It kept me up for months. I asked for help, and no one listened. What was I supposed to do?" The room exploded. "You could have not broken it," someone shouted. "You put kids in danger," another added. Karen raised her hands, as if calming a crowd. "I'm not the bad guy here," she said. "I'm a taxpayer. I deserve to sleep in my own home." Her words landed like gasoline on a fire. Susan banged a gavel, calling for order, but the damage was done. Karen had shown no remorse, no understanding of the harm she'd caused. Then came the twist that turned the room upside down. Ethan, the teenager with the video, stood up, his phone in hand. "I didn't just film her breaking the light," he said, his voice nervous but firm. "I heard her talking to someone on the phone right after. She said, 'I took care of it. They'll learn to listen now.'" A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ethan played the audio, Karen's voice unmistakable, cold and triumphant. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. She hadn't just acted on impulse. She planned it, reveled in it. Karen's face drained of color. "That's out of context," she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Greg, her lawyer, sitting in the back, scribbled furiously, knowing the audio was another nail in her defense. Mia watched Karen's composure crack, a flicker of fear in her eyes. For the first time, Karen seemed to realize the depth of her mistake. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You're all ganging up on me," she said, her voice rising. "This is a witch hunt." Susan stepped in, her patience gone. "This isn't about you, Karen. It's about a community you endangered. You don't get to play the victim here." The crowd roared in agreement, and Karen sat down, her hands trembling. Mia felt a strange mix of triumph and unease. Confronting Karen felt right, but the intensity of the room, the raw anger, was overwhelming. She slipped out before the meeting ended, needing air, needing space. Outside, the night was dark, the broken streetlight a block away, still unlit. Mia walked home, her mind racing. Karen's defiance, Ethan's video, the audio, it was all too much. She wondered if Karen would ever understand the harm she'd caused, or if she'd keep fighting, blind to the consequences. As she reached her porch, she saw Lila's bike leaning against the wall, a reminder of why she'd spoken up. This wasn't just about a light. It was about protecting what mattered. The days that followed were a storm. Karen's story dominated local news, her face plastered on every channel, her name a punchline on social media. The video and audio Ethan captured had gone viral, shared by strangers across the country. Memes called her Streetlight Karen, with captions mocking her entitlement. She stopped leaving her house, her SUV parked untouched in the driveway. Neighbors noticed her curtains stay drawn, as if she could shut out the world. But the world wasn't done with her. The city pressed charges, and the case moved fast. Vandalism was the least of it. Reckless endangerment carried heavier penalties, especially with evidence of intent. The audio, where Karen bragged about taking care of it, was a prosecutor's dream. Greg, her lawyer, tried to spin it as a moment of frustration, but the judge wasn't buying it. At the preliminary hearing, Karen sat stone-faced, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The prosecutor, a woman named Lena with a reputation for cutting through nonsense, laid out the case. The streetlight's destruction had led to 2 minor accidents, including a cyclist who'd needed stitches after hitting debris. "This wasn't a victimless act," Lena said, her voice steady. "Ms. Miller acted with disregard for human safety." Karen's defense was crumbling, but she refused to see it. She whispered furiously to Greg during breaks, insisting she could explain herself if given the chance. He urged her to take a plea deal, community service, restitution, maybe probation. "You're not winning this in court," he said. "The evidence is too strong." But Karen wouldn't hear it. She wanted a trial, wanted to tell her story. She still believed she could charm her way out, like she had so many times before. On Willow Street, life limped along. The city hadn't yet replaced the streetlight, citing budget constraints, and the block remained dark. Mia organized a neighborhood watch, with parents taking turns walking kids to the bus stop. They used flashlights, their beams cutting through the shadows, but it wasn't enough. Every creak of a branch, every rustle in the bushes made Mia's heart race. She hated that Karen's actions had stolen their sense of safety. Lila, picking up on her mom's tension, started having nightmares, waking up crying about the angry lady. Mia held her close, promising things would get better, but she wasn't sure she believed it. The twist from a meeting, Ethan's audio, had shifted the narrative, but another surprise was brewing. A local activist group, focused on public safety, got wind of the case. They started a petition demanding the city not only replace the light, but install brighter ones across the neighborhood. They rallied outside City Hall, holding signs that read, "Light up our streets," and "No more Karens." Mia joined one of the protests, her first time doing anything like this. She felt nervous, exposed, but the crowd's energy lifted her. "We're not just fighting for one light," the group's leader said. "We're fighting for our kids, our neighbors, our home." Karen, watching the protest on the news, felt the walls closing in. Her real estate business was tanking, clients dropped her, listings stalled, and her inbox filled with hate mail. She tried to fight back, posting a long statement online about her unfair treatment and how the streetlight had ruined her life. The post backfired spectacularly, with thousands of comments tearing her apart. "You ruined your own life," one read. "Own it." For the first time, Karen felt the weight of her actions, not as a legal problem, but as a personal collapse. She sat alone in her dark living room, the glow of her phone the only light, and wondered how it had come to this. Mia, meanwhile, found herself changing. Speaking at the meeting and joining the protest had awakened something in her, a strength she hadn't known she had. She started talking to neighbors she'd barely known before, organizing fundraisers to cover the cost of a new light. The community was coming together, not just against Karen, but for each other. It was a small victory, but it felt like a lifeline. Still, Mia couldn't shake the fear that Karen wasn't done. The woman's silence, her drawn curtains, felt like the calm before a storm. As the trial date loomed, Karen's defiance began to crack. Late one night, unable to sleep, she walked to the broken streetlight. It was still cordoned off, a sad relic of her anger. She stood there, staring at the twisted metal, the glass long, swept away. For a moment, she saw herself through the neighbor's eyes, not as a victim, but as a wrecking ball. The thought hit her like a punch, and she turned away, tears stinging her eyes. But pride is a stubborn thing, and Karen wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. The courtroom was small, its wooden benches packed with neighbors, reporters, and curious onlookers. Karen sat at the defense table, her face pale but composed, her blazer pressed to perfection. She'd refused the plea deal against Greg's advice, insisting she could sway the judge. Across the room, Mia sat in the back row, her hands clasped tightly. She hadn't wanted to come, but the community had asked her to be there, to represent them. Her testimony, along with Ethan's video and audio, was the backbone of the case. She felt the weight of it, heavy as a stone in her chest. The prosecution called Mia first. She took the stand, her voice steady despite her nerves. She described what she'd seen: Karen's deliberate swing, the shattering glass, the casual way she'd walked away. "It wasn't an accident," Mia said, her eyes meeting Karen's for a brief, electric moment. She knew what she was doing. Karen stared back, her expression unreadable, but her fingers twitched, betraying her calm. The prosecutor played Ethan's video, the courtroom silent as the bat connected with the light, followed by Karen's chilling audio. "They'll learn to listen now." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's turn came next. She took the stand with the confidence of someone used to winning, her voice smooth as she spun her story. "I was exhausted," she said, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. "That light shone into my bedroom every night, robbing me of sleep. I asked the city for help, but they ignored me. I acted out of desperation." The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Desperation doesn't justify endangering others," she said. "Did you consider the consequences?" Karen faltered, her script crumbling. "I didn't think anyone would get hurt," she said, but the words sounded hollow, even to her. The prosecution was relentless. Lena, the prosecutor, presented evidence of the accidents caused by the unlit street, the cyclist's stitches, a pedestrian's sprained ankle, countless near misses. She called experts who explained the streetlight's role in pedestrian safety, its absence a clear and present danger. Karen's defense, built on her claim of being a victim, began to unravel. Greg tried to pivot, arguing the city's negligence in not addressing her complaints, but the judge wasn't swayed. The city's response doesn't excuse vandalism, she said, or recklessness. Outside the courtroom, the community's fight for safer streets gained momentum. The activist group's petition had collected thousands of signatures, and the city council promised to install new lights, not just on Willow Street, but across underserved neighborhoods. Mia, now a reluctant leader, spoke at a rally, her voice stronger than before. "This isn't about one person," she said, the crowd cheering. "It's about all of us standing together." Lila, watching from the front, beamed with pride. Mia felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, a sense of purpose born from the chaos. Karen, meanwhile, was drowning. The trial exposed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Neighbors testified about her pattern of complaints, her disregard for the community. Ethan's father spoke about the fear his son felt after filming her, worried she'd come after him. Karen wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that she wasn't a monster, but the evidence was overwhelming. The viral video, the audio, the accidents, it all painted a picture she couldn't escape. For the first time, she saw herself as they did, not a victim, but a villain. The final blow came when the judge delivered her ruling. "Ms. Miller," she said, her voice like steel, "your actions were selfish and dangerous. You endangered lives, disrupted a community, and showed no remorse." Karen was found guilty of vandalism and reckless endangerment. The sentence, 6 months in jail, a hefty fine, and restitution for the light's repair. As the gavel fell, Karen's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. She was led away in handcuffs, her head bowed, the weight of her choices crushing her. Mia watched, her heart a tangle of emotions: relief, sadness, resolve. She'd expected to feel triumphant, but instead, she felt the quiet ache of a community scarred but healing. As she left the courtroom, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. The broken lights still stood, a reminder of what had been lost, but also of what they'd gained: a voice, a purpose, a fight worth winning. Karen's fall was complete. In the county jail, she sat in a cell that smelled of bleach and despair, her designer clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The first night, she didn't sleep. The sounds, clanging doors, distant shouts, the hum of fluorescent lights kept her awake, but it was her own thoughts that tormented her most. She replayed the moment she swung the bat, the glass shattering, the neighbors' faces. She thought she was in control, that she could bend the world to her will. Now, staring at the concrete walls, she saw the truth. She'd broken more than a streetlight. She'd broken trust, safety, and her own carefully crafted image. Her first weeks in jail were a blur of routine and regret. She kept to herself, avoiding the other inmates' curious stares. Letters arrived, some from former clients, others from strangers who'd seen the news. Most were cruel, calling her entitled, heartless. One, though, was different. It was from Mia, written in careful, deliberate handwriting. "I don't hate you," it began, "but what you did hurt us all. I hope you understand that now." Karen read it over and over, the words cutting deeper than any insult. Mia's forgiveness, however tentative, was a mirror, forcing Karen to face herself. Outside, Willow Street was changing. The city, spurred by the activist group's pressure, installed a new streetlight, brighter and sturdier than the last. The neighborhood celebrated with a block party, kids riding bikes under the new glow, music drifting from porches. Mia stood with her neighbors, Lila laughing as she chased fireflies. The light wasn't just a light anymore. It was a symbol of their resilience, their unity. Tom, the grandfather from next door, raised a glass of lemonade. "To us," he said, "and to never letting anyone dim our shine." The crowd cheered, and Mia felt tears prick her eyes. But the victory wasn't without scars. Some neighbors still glanced warily at Karen's house, its windows dark, its lawn overgrown. Rumors swirled that she'd sell it, move away, start over. Mia hoped she would, but not for the reasons others did. She wanted Karen to have a chance to change, to learn from her mistakes. It was a small hope, fragile but real, born from Mia's own journey. She'd gone from a quiet single mom to a community leader, her voice now heard at city council meetings, her ideas shaping the neighborhood's future. Karen, in her cell, began to unravel the knot of her pride. She started writing letters, not to her lawyer, but to herself, pouring out the anger and fear she'd buried for years. She wrote about her childhood, where being the loudest got her the most attention, about her career, where charm masked her insecurity, about the streetlight, a petty battle she'd turned into a war. She didn't send these letters, but writing them felt like peeling away layers of a lie she'd told herself, that she was always right, always justified. One day, a guard handed her a newspaper. The headline read, "Austin Neighborhood Rallies for Safer Streets." Below was a photo of Mia, standing at a podium, her face fierce and determined. Karen stared at it, a pang of something like envy mixing with shame. Mia had turned her mistake into something good, something lasting. Karen folded the paper and tucked it under her pillow, a reminder of what she'd lost and what she might still become. As her release date neared, Karen faced a choice. She could return to Austin, head high, pretending nothing had changed. Or she could start over, somewhere new, with a humility she was only beginning to understand. The thought terrified her, but also sparked something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild, not as the old Karen, but as someone better. Someone who listened. Someone who cared. On Willow Street, Mia looked out at the new light, its glow steady and warm. She thought of Karen, alone in her cell, and wondered if she'd ever find her way. Mia didn't know the answer, but she knew one thing. The light would keep shining, no matter what. And so would they. Spring arrived in Austin, and Willow Street bloomed with new life. The new streetlight stood tall, its light casting a warm circle over the sidewalk where kids played and neighbors walked their dogs. The scars of that August night had faded, replaced by a stronger, closer community. Mia, now a familiar face at city meetings, had helped secure funding for more lights, more crosswalks, more safety. She wasn't just a mom anymore. She was a force, her quiet strength inspiring others to speak up, to fight for what mattered. Lila, too, had changed, her nightmares gone, her laughter louder than ever. Karen's house went up for sale, a for sale sign staked in the overgrown lawn. She'd been released a month earlier, but no one had seen her. Some said she'd moved to Dallas, others to a small town far from Austin's buzz. Wherever she was, she'd left quietly, her SUV gone in the night. Mia heard she'd written a letter to the neighborhood, delivered to Susan, the meeting moderator. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was close, a rambling, raw admission of regret, of wanting to be better. Susan read it to the neighbors, and while some scoffed, others nodded. "People can change," Tom said, his voice softer than before. "Doesn't erase what she did, but maybe she's trying." Mia kept her letter from Karen, tucked in a drawer with Lila's drawings. She didn't read it often, but when she did, it reminded her of the power of standing up, of holding firm. She'd faced Karen, faced her own fears, and come out stronger. The neighborhood had too. They'd turned a moment of destruction into a movement, their voices echoing beyond Willow Street. The activist group was now citywide, pushing for safer streets everywhere, and Mia was at its heart, her name synonymous with change. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Mia walked Lila to the bus stop, the new light glowing above them. Lila skipped ahead, her backpack bouncing, and Mia smiled, her heart full. The street felt alive again, safe again. She thought of Karen, wherever she was, and hoped she'd found some peace. Not because Karen deserved it, but because Mia believed in second chances, not just for others, but for herself. She'd once been afraid to speak, to fight, but now she knew her own strength. The community's victory wasn't just in the new light or the safer streets. It was in the way they'd come together, the way they'd refused to let one person's anger dim their spirit. They'd rebuilt not just a streetlight, but a sense of home, of belonging. Mia looked up at the light, its glow steady and sure, and felt a surge of pride. They'd done this. Together. As the stars began to appear, Mia took Lila's hand, and they walked home, the light guiding their way. The shadows were gone, and so was the fear. Willow Street was theirs again, brighter than ever. And somewhere, maybe, Karen was starting over, learning to live in a world where she wasn't the center, but just one part of something bigger. The light would keep shining for all of them.